Hello, and welcome to yet another episode of Escaping Dystopia. My name is Wah. I'll be your very casual host this evening. Today is, August 21st, 2020 still. This is episode 110, 72 more day years until we change again. I'm going to try a couple things new this evening. We'll see how that all goes. I have a lot of stuff lined up for us tonight. And it looks like things are going okay. That's me right there. Hi, how you doing? Let's make sure our sound is working okay. And that's me. Okay, so that's all right. I need to move this down a little bit. Let's try that. So, what are we doing now, man? Holy cow. What the heck is going on in the world? This has been, let's turn that off. So, yeah. Got a lot of stuff to work through. We're going to go through a few topics here and there. Like I said, I wanted to try and keep it a little bit more casual tonight. Drop a few more of the F-bombs, maybe, if we feel the need. No need to do so without reason. There's been some crazy stuff happening. It's been about 2 weeks since the last show. Like I said, doing a little bit more personal stuff. So I've been a little. I like my rip on this, by the way. I was gonna put on another shirt, but you guys don't even get a new shirt today. That's how busy we are. We're like T minus 2 months to the new baby. So doing a bunch of reorg around the house. Super busy at work. Drinking tonight. Crashed this afternoon and took a little nap, so that's why the show's a little bit late. Alright, so what should we start on tonight, man? Holy cow. Last couple weeks, again, have been really kind of nuts. And that's the thing, too, because people kind of forget how out of control they can go sometimes, right? So this... Well, one of the things that we talk about trying to is the more important stuff here. So we're going to talk about Spaceship Earth a little bit. The last decade here, and I'll put this out, I think this is probably the more important thing, is even with all the COVID going on, this last decade that we've just experienced was the hottest decade in recorded human history. There was, I think I have that one up here. Let me pull that up. Make sure I share that. The Greenland point of no return. Oh, it finished that for me. Yeah, kind of a cliche a little bit, but it's true. The Greenland ice sheets have started melting to a degree that they're unlikely to recover from. That means that we're likely to see some more sea level rise in the fairly recent future. There's also 2 hurricanes currently tracking towards Louisiana. They're both en route to get there next week. If you're like, that's kind of weird, the reason why you're like, that's kind of weird is because that's not ever happened before where it's worked out. We'll see if the physics are even possible for there to be 2 hurricanes or tropical storms at the same time in the Gulf of Mexico headed towards the Louisiana coast. If indeed that's the case, things could get a little chaotic down there. There's forest fires raging in California and here in Colorado because the drought in Colorado, where I'm at here, last year we had no drought in any part of the state. This year, it's 100% of the state is at some level of drought. My lawn is extremely is contemplating xeriscaping. It's lawn suicide is on the menu because it's just going to be that warm. This has been a pretty brutal month up here. I think we're going to break the record for 90-degree days up here. I'm a little bit outside of Denver. In Littleton, we hit 100 degrees the other day, It's just been really hot and dry. We haven't had a really good rainstorm, and I don't even know how long. So that's been interesting. Let me share all the, this is a little bit older article on some of the wildfires burning here. They had to close the highway. So the main highway goes through the Rocky Mountains from Colorado through the west, I-70. They had to close it the other day because of wildfires. One of the things that you get actually with wildfires, actually kind of interesting, is they kill all the, they burn up all the plants, right? And all the plants, what the plants are doing is holding all the dirt on all the hills. And if you get rid of the plants that are holding the dirt on the hills, the dirt and the rocks slide down the hills because they don't have plants holding them there anymore. So one of the things that you get as a result of the forest fires, a direct result of the forest fires, and this burnout is a lot of rock slides, which cover a lot of the highways, which is why you get highway closures. So there's your little cause and effect of mountain towns and climate change. More road closures. Right? USPS. So, let me go back a little ways to a week and a half ago, a week and a couple days ago, where Donald was talking about how mail-in voting is this big whole BS lie thing that's true and fake and fraud and all that. Let me just, come on folks, this is one of the things that's been really frustrating about the last few years, is that, up is down, down is up, what color is the sky? These are all questions that have somehow come back to be like, well, wait, why are we asking this question? He's a con man, right? So his claims about mail-in voting fraud, they're all complete horseshit. They're complete fucking horseshit. Like I said, gonna go blue tonight, F-bombs are coming. It's hard to really cover the depth of the attacks on our democracy that have happened over the last couple weeks. And the USPS, the United States Postal Service, right, has been at the center of those. Because one of the things that we've started to realize, and here in Colorado, again, you have to understand, Colorado is a mail-in voting state. If you're a registered voter, right, and you're registered to vote, you'll receive a voter packet, which gives voter information about the upcoming election, which is a nice little thing. And then you'll receive your ballot in the mail. You then either can, fill out that ballot, put the stamp on it, return it in the mail, or go dropping it off in a drop box. Because I'm such a go-getter, I usually wait and drop it off in the drop box. So I don't actually use the Postal Service to return my mail-in ballots, and I haven't for any of the ballots that I've used since I've lived here in Colorado, and I think I voted in pretty much every election. And most of the primaries the last couple of years, I didn't vote in the primaries first couple of years. Anyway, whatever. I'm a pretty active voter, is what I'm saying. And it's a pretty good system. And the voting rates, and I think the county that I live in, again, I try and, wherever I'm at, I try and make the world around me the way that I want it to be. So the county around me is one of the highest voting participation counties in the world, or in the state. And so something we're doing is working all right. I'm not entirely unhappy with our representative, Diana DeGette. Anyway, that's another story or two. So, he's going after it. So he's been going after mail-in voting, and one of the things that's happened here, and this is a longer story, there was a new Postmaster General installed this year. There's been some controversy, and I need to actually have the link about that, because one of the things that came out is Williams, DeJoy, resign. There was this guy, David Williams, who is a United States postal overseer who resigned. One of these, quote, career public servants. The deep state. They're so deep in the state where they, run things and... But it's guys like this, right? And he noted that the hiring process for the new Postmaster General was somewhat circumvented, and they have a firm that's supposed to be consulted on people who they would recommend then for the job after that. Oh no. Didn't work. Alright, that's okay. Sorry, one of my little computer hack jobs. So they circumvented this, because normally they would go through this consulting firm that would find, oh, here's people who are qualified to be Postmaster General, here's their names. You guys pick one of them, and apparently DeJoy was not on that list, right? So somehow he got in there and was open for consideration for this job without having actually been vetted originally. Now, there's been some really crazy stuff been going on since then, and some of these are not things that we have really heard about, like this thing in Alaska where they changed it where Alaska postal workers can't be witnesses for votes. So, and as this story shows, in a lot of these places, the Anchorage Daily News reported on Tuesday that Alaska Division of Election Director had sent the USPS a letter last Thursday seeking an explanation for complaints that postal workers in her state had been telling voters that they were not allowed to sign ballots. So in a lot of these more remote places where one of the only other people that you'll see to be a witness for these ballots, for these voting, are postal workers, now they are barred from, while on duty, actually doing the witnessing. So I think in order to have that vote counted, then you would, as that remote, extremely remote voter, then have to go back with that person for them to go off duty, then have them be a witness, and then I guess, I don't know. A lot of this, there's that. The U.S. Department of Veterans is trying to shift their prescription delivery methods, as it says here. I need to figure out this so I can look closer to the camera so you guys can see my face. Got some new old person bifocal contacts. Yeah, anyway, I'm old. And there's that here. Let's do this, so we won't be so worried about that and can just read the stuff. So the VA has now confirmed that the United States Postal Service, which is responsible for these, has indeed been delayed in delivering these critical medications by an average of over almost 25% over the past year, with many locations experiencing much more significant delays. So these are real, actual things that are happening, right? This isn't like some weird conspiracy about... We'll talk about weird conspiracies a little bit later, but the USPS, this is, the VA, the Veterans Affairs, and this is, one of those kind of, as far as the American public goes, like, come on, let's not mess with our veterans. We do all sorts of crazy stuff. There's a big story today in the Los Angeles Times about all these dead animals because the USPS isn't delivering these animals to farmers on time. So, like, their chicks and little babies that they order through the mail that they've been doing for years and years, and they've always shown up live and on time, are now showing up dead and late. And these changes are real, and they've been happening. And listening to DeJoy talking about it today, man, holy cow. He was evasive. He was aggressive in weird ways. One of the things that he did, and this is as a data guy, really concerned me. So he was talking about, and he mentioned kind of in the off, well, the analysis showed that we needed to do this in order to make sure that we could beat the goals, because nobody ever in the history of the Postal Service has actually tried to make money in doing this. What the hell, man? And really, his approach was like, what? And there was a few times I was like, what the heck? Because he was doing his Zoom thing today. But one of the senators was asking him, where, can you give us, she first asked in the minutes of the Board of Governors meeting to understand about his hiring process. She's like, can you commit to giving us the minutes of these meetings so we can take a look at what happened, right? Because I think they know that he wasn't hired. And he said, no, we can't do that. And then she said, well, you mentioned this analysis that said that's why you had to do all these things that you're doing. Can you commit to giving us the analysis that showed that this would work? Because obviously this is not working. And that's the thing, too. She did a great job of illustrating, like, showing that this is not working. So who told you that it was going to? And he wouldn't commit to that. And this is the thing, as a data guy, I'm really, really like, oh, alarm bells. If the person won't show you the analysis, the data analysis that caused them to make the changes that now you're being suspect about their intention for, their actual and true intention, And the fact that there is mail piling up, and there's no question that these service delays are happening. So this is as far as I'll go into conspiracy theory, right? I will give you a plausible explanation for the events that I see, and then a time-boxed period by which you can tell whether or not I have an accurate explanation. My feeling is that one of the plans, if you're going to go as nefarious as possible, the way it would work is that because of the pandemic that's going to be going nowhere in the next few months other than down a little bit and then start to go back up with schools and all the stuff that's happening. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Voting is going to be largely by mail for this election. By targeting certain precincts, you can slow down the ballots of certain demographics and certain areas. If you then have a very aggressive attorney general who steps in and says, no, every ballot that wasn't here by election day cannot be counted. We can't let this drag on forever. And you have somebody who's the postmaster general who's doing a very targeted slowdown of certain types of ballots from certain types of people. Or, and this is one of the other scenarios that I've kind of just gamed out in my mind, right? They're slowing down the Postal Service, and now they get this huge influx of money from Congress. And so what DayYears does is not reinstall these machines that they've trashed, because they can't reinstall the machines that they've trashed because they're trashed. People have pictures of them. And he said, we'll stop trashing machines, but you can't replace machines, so you're still under capacity to do this. So they're going to hire this group of consultants or whatever, people to come in and do this. And then that group will be doing like some sort of like hand sorting of ballots or something. And then all of a sudden you get to this weird hanging chat, or like, gosh, I can't seem to read this horrible handwriting, or, even though these are all pre-printed ballots, or, this signature doesn't look like it matches. We're gonna have a signature expert. Oh, he's busy. Oh, he won't be here until 2 weeks after the. Oh, okay. Well, we'll wait. Oh, we have stringent policies for these ballots, folks. We're trying to make sure they're all valid, and now you start to see that all these other ones don't show up, and I'm really concerned you're going to see a lot of really sketchy stuff. And I'll mention this in a couple other stories and a couple other threads tonight, that this idea of using these outside firms, that's going to jiggle, using these outside firms as cover for non-disclosure agreements is exactly what they've done as a number of times. That's what's happening. What the Senate reached out about the DayYears hiring, saying, hey, did you actually recommend this guy? And they're like, well, we can't tell you if we did or not. And it's like, you should be able to tell us. We're the Senate. This is this is what we're supposed to do, is be a bunch of wise, learned citizens who oversee what the heck the government's doing. In theory. So the USPS is, that attack is real and going on. And listening to Republicans today talk about it, they are, a big part of the reason why it's having any issues whatsoever. The way they were talking about things today and the way they're trying to blow this off are a little bit just kind of boo. But that is what it is. All right. Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm supposed to share this. God, man, I'm just so bad at this stuff. Yeah, let's do that. Share now. Boom. Alright, so maybe somebody will come and watch. I don't know. Nobody is out there. It's all good. No worries. No pressure. Alright, so last few days. That's our post office stuff. Got that here. I'll share this as a Snopes one about some of the boxes being removed. This is real. It's happening. Whether or not that whole thing about the DayYears bar, whatnot, triumvirate of trying to screw with the election is going to happen. That's what we're trying to avoid, is a scenario where that even is really potentially possible. Because the chaos that will cause, it's going to be really bad for the country. A lot of these things are already, but that's what we're dealing with now. All right, so Biden-Harris officially nominated for the DNC stuff. I thought it was great. I think they did a pretty good job with the convention. I don't really watch a lot of that stuff. It's in the evening, and whatever. So I watched a few of it. I liked Biden's speech, actually. That really blew away, I think, the whole ridiculous, stupid dementia attack that they've been trying to pin on him. I thought he did really well. I liked Harris's speech. They had some really good, poignant moments with the productions of it. So, yeah, I think they're ready to get going on this. I don't think you see much change in polling on that stuff. There's so much of this stuff is baked in at this point, and there's been some interesting articles I've seen here and there on that. I think, politically and personally, right, the people who at this point are vote or not, it's really interesting, right? I don't know where or on that fence people can be, but I know, my understanding of the way human behavior works is that trying to make sure that in every situation it's as easy as possible for all those people who need to get out and vote to do so, and that those votes get counted, is going to be a big focus of the rest of this. And I don't think, there's not really much of a point to do much political arguing at this point now. And that's what's so weird, right? The folks are just working from such a wildly different set of facts at this point politically here in the U.S. And you'll see this a little bit more. I was going to talk this. Let's do this Bannon stuff, and then we'll come back to the plague thing. Because this is funny. But this is where, people are just on a totally different set of facts, right? So, hey, Julia. Steve Bannon was arrested. Steve Bannon was arrested on a Chinese fugitive's yacht. Let me look this up for you real quick. Hold on, because this is kind of funny. Yeah, Chinese billionaire, fugitive. And he'd been out at sea for like 3 weeks trying to avoid the feds before they came and got him. This whole thing with the build the wall was a total scam. And they ended up getting busted for it. And it was, I believe, the postal inspectors, right, Postal Service, who got him, because, again, using the U.S. Postal Service to run a scam is a felony. We've had to do this so many times in our history as a country because, again, the Postal Service is a service. Now, it's interesting. We don't have, and we've never really gone to the notion of having a national internet service. A NIS, wouldn't that be nice? We could call it the National Internet Service. That would be like the USPS, the U.S. Postal Service, the USIS, the United States Internet Service. Which, I mean, I think you make it part of the Postal Service. You just put some big broadband Wi-Fi broadcasters at every postal station. But I mean, it's a service, right? That's the whole point of this, is to have these out there and to provide as a service these things. Anyway. Sorry, I got a little off track there with my build-the-wall laughter. So this was that whole scam, right? You remember this was a big media story. They were going to privately fund the wall, taking all these donations. They ended up getting like $25 million from people. The idea being that they would earmark the money for Congress to spend only for the wall, and then they could take these private donations. So it's literally so funny, guys, because it's these people who hate the government, who hate taxes, are voluntarily paying taxes for this idiotic racist wall thing. And the people who ran this scam, which was Bannon and this guy named Coalface, who's a veteran who was hurt pretty badly. He lost his legs in Iraq. a number of these two other guys. There's one guy who's like the acting undersecretary of the DEA, I think, ran this scam. And basically what they did was have this company, they got text messages and all them, basically how they set up this company that they'd, pay themselves to be the, vice president or whatever, take off this thing. And they'd pay themselves from various funds. And that's the whole thing, though. You can't do this kind of stuff where you're collecting stuff for one thing, but using it to pay yourself while you're saying that you're not paying yourself. And your text messages are like, well, we'll never tell anybody that we're paying ourselves or how much. A friend of mine did this analysis of it. And again, the idea is, right, so you can't earmark funds that you give to the government for a particular purpose, right? It goes into a general fund. That's just the way the law works with the Treasury. So the idea behind the campaign was that they would change the law of the United States to allow for that. And until that would happen, the money would sit somewhere in escrow. Now, anybody who's familiar with the nature of money, right, you know that money generates interest. And large amounts of money generate large amounts of interest. And when you're talking about millions and tens of millions of dollars, you're talking about, over the course of multiple years, a sizable amount of interest. I mean, to the nature of, I think over 3 years, it was like $750,000 or $1 million of interest on this pot of money. Now, what you do with that and how you even attribute that is all part of the law regarding this kind of fundraising, right? You're using this money to bring it in. And they did none of that. They just pocketed it. They're like on yachts and just taking money, personal expenses, paying off credit cards. This guy, Colfage, was telling people to write out personal checks to him. Care of, we will build the wall. And this was a big thing. Like Don Jr. Was like went to one of their things. The president's claiming he never heard of this plan, and then he's like, and it was also a stupid plan that I never heard of, and it would never work, and that's not right, and I never heard of it, and I don't know these people, and even though that was my campaign manager, and I had him here as my and and most of the fundraising was actually done at Mar-a-Lago. Anyway. So, Bannon was arrested. I think that's great. And this is the thing about it, too. So, you'll remember a little while ago, there was, Bill Barr tried to tell one of the attorney generals, the state attorney, I don't know what they're called, one of the attorney generals of the United States, that he was fired, he was resigning, and the guy was like, well, I'm not resigning, had no plans to resign. And then, a couple days later, he formally made him resign. And if you'll recall about that, when he said he was resigning, he was actually also announced that it was going to be replaced with this other guy who was a Trump lackey. So what happened is when he unresigned and made him fire him per se, right, with his, you will now resign. Okay, if you say it like that, then I will then, resign. But because of that, they were able to then get that person's actual assistant to then take over the job. It's that person who continued this investigation into Bannon, right? Had the Trump lackey been put in charge like Bill Barr was trying to, this would have gone away. Right? That's Bill Barr. He's the Attorney General of the United States right now. So, Bannon, going to jail, most likely. That's a fraud. That's a link. Bam, bam. All right, so now, GOP-led Senate details ties between 2016 campaign and Russia. Russia! My gosh, guys. So it's so clear in here. Like, literally, they had, through Roger Stone and WikiLeaks, a direct link to these folks. They had, talking to Kilminnick, talking to other folks. The Senate panel stuff lays it out pretty clear, a little bit more. And again, this is the one that was won by the Republicans who knew all this stuff while they cleared Donald, while they voted him not guilty for the impeachment for the stuff that he had done in the Ukraine. Now, I do fault some of the House folks for not including a lot of this Russia stuff in the impeachment hearings, because it's so here he's got a phone call, right, and they know this, the grab him by the pussy tape. Remember when Donald's on tape, the Inside Edition tape with Billy Bush was going to come out, and they knew it was going to come out, and so that's when they triggered excuse me, the call to release the emails that the Russians had stolen from the DNC. And the timeline is direct, right? It was a direct collusion action where they're saying, hey, we need you to do this, go ahead and pull the trigger on this. And that was when WikiLeaks, who was getting their information from the Russian intelligence services, who had hacked the DNC and the RNC, by the way, and probably pretty much a lot of these organizations that don't have InfoSec anywhere near what they need to have. So it was a direct action. And that's to say nothing of all the troll farm stuff and their targeted actions via social media. It's bad. Anyway, Senate came out and did that. So, yeah, I mean, that was as clear as day. I mean, it happened. That was 2016. And the thing about this is so weird, and it's always been difficult to get the Republicans in the Senate to admit, right? Because they all owe their power and all these judges and their new, lower taxes for all their donors to the Russians helping them win the election and get the Oval Office. So their desire, shall we say, to clean house in that regard has been less than sincere. So, speaking of Republicans, they're going to have a convention next week. No, I know. That's the question, right? Like, what's that going to be? So we have already some indication that there's going to be, of course, some laws broken, because apparently the president wants to do his acceptance speech from the White House, which is, I believe the word is unprecedented and often illegal, because the whole idea, again, is that you're not supposed to do political campaigning from, specifically the people's house. And this is one of the lines that I think has been extremely blurred. There's a lot of stuff, all of the assistants of the president, all this stuff, they're not supposed to be doing, this just raw campaigning that they've been doing. They're supposed to be serving the people of the United States and executing the laws of the United States, and not being just this constant partisan presence. And so all of that has been very strange. And now, where you're going to have the president doing an acceptance speech, apparently from the White House. So we'll see how the RNC does that, pulls that off. By the way, I mean, and this is an article about what they have to offer. Like, this whole idea that the president can just write with the stroke of a pen and cut taxes and cut the payroll taxes is not the way it works at all. And what this article I just shared shows, I mean, businesses warn they won't participate in Trump's payroll tax plan, U.S. Chamber of Commerce, National Retail Foundation, because the idea is basically they're going to, all of these taxes are going to be deferred. This is one of the things that came out this last couple of weeks, that he wrote this thing, we're going to do this, we're going to give everybody this 6.2% cut on, so you're going to stop, you're going to defund Social Security for the next few months. And then the idea is, at the end of that, if you elect me, I'll make it permanent and you won't have to pay it back. But if you don't, you're going to have to pay it back. And that's literally, infuriatingly, the dynamic they were trying to create with this. Like, here, I'll give you this tax cut. You can keep it if you elect me. But if you don't, you have to pay it back. Like, what? Who does this? Anyway, so that's just dumb. So that didn't work either. And everybody else is like, well, that's not going to work. And, yeah. What is that word? Oh, shoot. All right. Oh, that's what that word is. Rand. So, yeah, what is the RNC going to do? I mean, they're going to have these folks like Rand Paul or who else who are like, we don't need to give people money because then they won't work. And then if they don't work, then, all the people who give me money won't make money. The last 6 months in this pandemic has really exposed, who generates value in our society and who don't. Now, speaking of, this kind of ties back to the Russia stuff real quick, because the president, I don't know that he's spoken about this yet, but the main opposition leader to Putin in Russia has fallen ill. He's poisoned. He's in a coma, I believe. He has now been, after not allowing it, he was later allowed to transfer to Germany, where I do believe he will expire within a little bit. But we'll see how that works. This goes back to, and I don't know if this is just like Putin, reminding Donald that he can kill whoever he wants. Or if it's something else. Whatever. Super sketchy on that. I did want to share this other thing here. Where is our... Oh, yeah. We'll talk about that in a little bit. School and COVID. And that's our last one. Oh, yeah, we got that. Oh, yeah, we did that one. Boom. That's me. That's that. All right, 2 more here. All right. So, the biblical thing. All right, so... Y'all, or whoever is listening, we'll see, whoever wants to listen. So I've talked about this a little bit before. You were talking about this the other day, right? You can see in our society here now, currently, right, how bad incompetent leadership actually is, right? How many lives it actually can affect. And we see kind of the direct line between that corruption and incompetence, and how that flows and snowballs into the lives into people's lives. And as we've been talking about this, right? There's been all these, hurricanes and fires and earthquakes and yada 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 and plagues. The plague thing too is funny, and this is why I started thinking about this, right? Because this was going into the biblical stuff, right? Because you had all these things going on with slaves and this incompetent leader and Pharaoh who's, spending all these resources building a tribute to himself, right? And I'm going, this is kind of the Ten Commandments version of the Bible, right? If you've ever not seen it, you should spend the time and understand American society through our culture, and that's a big part of it. This kind of Yul Brynner, and Yul Brynner's probably a little bit better Pharaoh than what we had in the real world, because spending these kind of resources on this completely narcissistic endeavor, right? And you've got somebody who's doing that, and is this person paying attention to the fields, right? And so you have like these plagues that are all related to mismanagement of agriculture, right? You've got, a natural plague, which is going to come when something starts happening and your advisors are like, Pharaoh, there's people are getting sick. We need to stop and quarantine and not them. No, they must build. Get out there. And then all of a sudden, there's a plague everywhere. And then, you mismanage or misread, the flood signs. And then there's a bad flood. And then you get the frogs. Right, and you get the other plagues, and then, of course, you have the trained assassins go out and kill all the people on that one night, and for everybody who doesn't have the blood above the door, right? All of these things are pretty doable, per se, or attributable to incompetent, hereditary wealth leadership, which, of course, being represented by Pharaoh in the Bible and Donald Trump here in the United States. And so we get a plague. And we get all this other crazy crap that we just shouldn't have to deal with because we've got incompetence in charge. And that's the thing, he is an incompetent fool with power. All right, so what do we got now? Oh yeah, so we had this guy, Miles Taylor. He's not, no relation. He came out and was doing the rounds this week. He talked about how Donald, is just pretty much racist, and the child separation policy was intentionally meant to hurt kids, and he wanted to trade Puerto Rico for Greenland. He's an idiot! Oh, but that's what Republicans are now, and they can't really see around it. Trump said Puerto Rico is dirty and its residents poor, says former DHS official, which is, again, sanitizing the intent and, meaning and meanness of the sentiment as expressed. And this whole, we're going to buy Greenland thing was, not an unreal thing that he was not concerned about. He's an idiot. It's like Pharaoh trying to build this huge statue to himself. Who cares how many people dies? Their tactics are fascistic. Bill Barr slams Black Lives Matter, accusing the left of tearing down the system. This rhetorical battle has been really unfortunate to see the Attorney General step into this so far and into such just a ridiculous stance on it, right? Because we've gone from literally having a black Attorney General who was leading a charge, and a very strong charge, against, systemic racism and for police reform across the country, in Eric Holder, and now, that snapback between him and Barr. It's just been painful. One would hope that having this taste of what we've seen here, the country will snap back. Unfortunately, 40% of the country is not unhappy with that. We'll see how things shape up. It's, again, hard to see how Donald is really pulling anybody into his camp that wasn't already there. And at this point, you don't need to be hardening your base, because a vote from somebody who really, really wants to vote for you counts the same as somebody who votes, against you or is reluctantly voting. I mean, a vote is a vote. Now, whether or not they're hoping that their machinations with the post office are suitable enough to swing a few percentage points, we don't know, but... The Justice Department accuses Yale of discriminating against white and Asian applicants. This is real. This is real. That's who Bill Barr's Justice Department is, and I share that only as an example of it. It was one of those things that was like, all right, well, there it is. I've been talking a lot about this show, and I talked about this earlier. The Senate gave out a report about how the president was working with Russia. The president is talking about moving our troops out of Germany into Poland, and a number of other international moves that would lead to more of a realignment of the U.S. internationally. I just shared this article about this. That's what's on the ballot this year. And folks think of this whole kind of same sides, both sides are bad, blah, blah, blah. The degree to which Donald is compromised and continues to compromise the United States is not, it's not insignificant. It's not facetious. It's not overblown. It's real. That's what we're talking about here. That's why I'm spending my Friday night doing this. And it's past midnight, so my frickin' Saturday morning, bitches! Sorry. And then Facebook banned some but not all the QAnon groups. Why has it taken so damn long? I don't know. This is one of the stupidest things ever. I was making this, actually, kind of joked about it today. In the book Ender's Game, which I just read to the kiddos, there's the Ender's brother and sister, who are both also super geniuses, become these two personalities on the nets, which is just kind of the discussion forums in that fictional futuristic world. And they become Locke after John Locke, and Demosthenes after another historical figure, and argue these two sides of the political situation. And the whole premise here is that these two teenagers become these internationally renowned intellectual forces, one of them being a base kind of populist voice and the other one being the more reasoned actual voice. But That's what this whole QAnon thing started out. It was this bullshit internet troll thing. Now, it wasn't necessarily internet teenagers that started it. There was some, maybe... I don't know how this hasn't been... I would like to see, I guess I should say, and I wouldn't doubt that there is in the works, somebody who's figured out who exactly all these people are to the degree that you can, outside of, it's just a bunch of trolls who are doing this for the lulz, for the bullshit. It's the same kind of, anonymous folks, and just really took on a whole nother level. And once these things, you have a network effect. And that's what actually this was about, was turning down that network effect. Because what Facebook and some of the other social media companies are doing now is, instead of promoting groups that are similar to ones like this kind of stuff, and I talked about this dynamic in previous shows, they're going to not. So in order to see one of these groups, if you're in like moon landing is fake, you're not going to be bombarded with, oh, well, that was the old one, let me tell you about the new crazy stuff. And the type of person, idiots, that attracts, right, won't be so sucked in so easily. The hope is, the danger generally with that is, once you start doing things as a company that make you less money because you're not exploiting the fools that you can exploit, another company will come along and do exactly that, as long as it's legal and you're not doing it. That's welcome to the world of business, as it were. All right, so that's that. School and COVID. Guys, my kiddos are kind of starting school next week. They are going to be doing remote. This is not an ideal situation. We had in Colorado, they put out a new COVID tracker, which is nice. I will sell this, your own state should have something at least as good, I would hope, because this one's not bad. It's built on a piece of software called Tableau, which has a data visualization professional I've used. And actually, this isn't bad. They need a little UI thing here that shows a little loading thing as it's querying the database. But this kind of front end is actually something that you could put pretty easily or pretty straightforward on any data set that involves the same kind of stuff. And what this is, it shows demographic, deaths, cases, hospitalizations, testing. The demographic breakdown is what we had expected previously and had seen in other countries. The cases, and it has it really just straight up here, and it's actually, again, pretty well presented. You can check out the link if you'd like. And you can't see this for the U.S., by the way. The CDC side is so bad. And this thing is now super slow. Oh, there it is. So, yeah, it does have, it has cases, deaths by day, by week. It's 3-day average, moving average, all in a pretty nice little format. The demographic breakdown, again, shows that cases have been pretty even by age. By gender, by sex, and I don't know why they have sex on there. Anyway, whatever. But deaths have not. Deaths have a severe skew. Well, in age. So cases is pretty much even between male and female. But deaths is skewed, so it's actually 55% male, 44% female, and 0.4% other. Hey, this is the 21st century, guys. Let's pay attention. Well, what's this showing is that deaths are skewing male very strongly. Cases, on an age demographic basis, skew younger. And the largest case demographic age is in the 20s, I believe 20 to 29. And they are way overrepresented. And this is why this data visualization is well done, because it shows the both the proportional what you would expect to be in kind of a perfect world if everything was equally proportioned than the actual, right? So for the 20 to 29 area, you're actually seeing higher cases. So, but I think this is skewed too, because if you look at this data, you'll see that the 0 to 9 and 10 to 19, the cases are very low. I don't think people are testing kids very much because of the low fatality rate for children, extremely low, which is outstanding. I'm so happy that that's still the case. But the fatality rate for young children is extremely low, and so I don't think that they're being tested a whole lot, and so I don't think that they're seeing cases. Now, that being said, there is some indication that they are transmitters of the virus, that they are carriers but not sufferers of the effects. And this has to do with the receptors that it attacks, and these are things that you get more of as the older you get, apparently. And you can think of it that way. And because the demographic breakdown of the deaths shows extremely clearly that most of the deaths are for older people. What is that? 75% of the deaths are over 70. And then it gets up to almost 80, 88, or over 60. Is that number? Does those add up? It's missing some numbers there. Anyway, sorry. Quick head math. But most of the deaths are much older. Now, this does not speak at all to the long-term health effects of this disease. And a lot of people I know in their 30s and 40s and 50s, and I've heard about, have talked about, have recovered, but also had long-term effects, including heart issues, lung issues, not really recovering issues. So I don't like the idea of just being like, oh, well, you didn't die, you're fine. We're showing some now longer-term immunity to the virus. Do I have that one up here? No, not there. Anyway, so it's showing that we are getting some good immunity from people who are exposed. The vaccine production continues. So I don't think it's going to be too much. Well, I don't think before the end of the year we're going to see much more. And it's been so horribly mismanaged. And now the kids going back to school, every place you're seeing it, my God, you're seeing this stuff just go nuts. All right, let me, there's the lasting immunity one. All right, let me share that. The school stuff. So, this is the other thing too. Firm helping run U.S. coronavirus database refuses senators' questions. This is where that whole non-disclosure agreement, outside firm data stuff is really starting to be concerning, because Colorado has this wonderful data system, but I don't see anything like this for the whole country, right? And that we missed out completely on having a countrywide tracking system. And now I'm sorry, but I just don't trust the numbers that they're putting out. Just when we had case starts going down. Oh, there's this other thing too about how, in some places in testing, and I don't know if you saw, like Sharon Stone put out a video a little while ago about her family trying to get tested in Montana and how it was taking days and days to get results. But then at like parties in the Hamptons for a lot of these folks, like where DeJoy hangs out, they have these 30-minute saliva tests that you have to pass to come inside to the party. And so, where those are for schools. But the thing is, too, I mean, when you're talking about these kind of exponential curves and trying to test and keep track of this, once this starts to get out of control, the resources involved become just absurd, right? Because, excuse me, sorry, the president the other day was talking about how this huge spike in New Zealand, and it's like 10 cases, right? Like back when he was like 15 cases gonna soon be 0. No, that's what it's like for them now after 100 days with no cases. On our part, we had like 40,000, 48,000 new cases on that same day. Now, 48,000 new cases with as contagious as this virus is, that can spread to all these other places. Now, if you only have, say, even like a 10% positivity rate for testing, which is pretty high, you're talking about for those 48,000 positive cases, to get that, you had to have 500,000 tests. And that's a day, right? And so you're now talking about 500,000 tests a day. You're talking about 15 million tests, a month. And now you're talking about having all the precursors and all that stuff for all those tests, on that volume. And then you get down to something, but then it spikes back up again. Now all of these things you have to redo again. And so, again, now instead of, with 10 cases or 20 cases, and you're trying to keep, your test positivity rate down, and you have 1,000 tests, but with, 10 million tests that you have to produce every day, right? If you have to saliva test every child every day across the country because there's an active outbreak in the community, it's not possible, and you're wasting resources building a monument to a fool. The U.S. Yeah, testing is going down in weird cases. Oh no, that's right. Let me share this. All right, we're about done. Almost, I guess, right? That was kind of my big rant. This is why I don't feel like sending my own kids back to school. Also, because coronavirus prompts closing of Georgia high school and district with over 1,000 in quarantine. Yes, no doubt. This is in all these places where they're like, oh, we're going to go back. We'll be fine. No, we're not. And this is totally, there's the lasting immunity. Governor DeSantis, Dorona Death Santis, I think is his name. He's the governor in Florida, which is has an unemployment system that was designed to not let people sign up for unemployment, and B, has a raging epidemic that's about to get wildly bad, and C, has a huge elderly population that D, mostly male, votes Trump, and they're all dying. Again, remember, skews male, skews old male. He's killing off his own people. And that's why, from this, bringing it back around to the USPS, why I don't, A, doubt that he'll do anything to try and win, and B, he knows he can't win legit. And I know somebody is telling him, and I'm sure he's seen the poll numbers, and we're headed towards Plan B, and Plan C, and Plan D, all of which are part of Plan W, which is win at any cost. And the cost here is already getting close to the USPS. So, got that. So he does that, and then Republican Senator Bill Cassidy tests positive for coronavirus. Ah, yes. Schools touted by DeSantis now in coronavirus nightmare. Right? So he actually was like, oh, these are great places. This is, oh yeah, no. Quarantine. Sturgis. More cases. We had a super spreader thing up there. So, they hadn't had a ton of cases, but we'll see in another 2 weeks. Again, guys, this hasn't changed since the beginning, right? There's an incubation period of up to 2 weeks for the disease. You don't necessarily just get it and then get it. And even that is not, and maybe I need to read up on the latest on how all of this progresses, and maybe watch a whole special on what we've learned. Which sucks, because you have to become a new specialist on a new fucking disease every year. But that was my understanding, right? So all these people who went to Sturgis and are having it incubate probably aren't going to have it show up and have been spreading it for 2 weeks before they start to really get sick. And then that little cough, because a lot of them are smokers anyway, and they probably got a little cough anyway, then becomes a, I can't really walk thing. So we'll see. I think we're coming up on that because it was after the 4th of July and after Memorial Day. We had those 2 weeks later, like, oh, hey, cases are spiking again. Whoa, golly gee willikers. Batman, how the fuck could that have happened? Oh, man. All right, let's see. Prisons have stock. It's one of my things the other day. Schools, all right. Yeah, apparently the prison stock prices. There was somebody complaining about this. Was going back to the Harris nomination. So it's been a couple weeks since we did a show, right? Kamala Harris wasn't even the VP nominee before we did our last show, and now she is staying up there with Biden, making some history there, and that's interesting. That I just want to talk about that. And actually, I've talked enough about stupid face for a little bit, so let's move on from that while we wrap up here. And I think we've talked about most of the other stuff, but that's one of the great things about what's been happening over this little while. As we've seen these mass protests across the country, this country that elected Obama is much different than the country that supports Donald. And the difference between the two is so stark, and it is almost like this polarized lens, right, that has these two different shimmering versions of reality of the United States. And I think Harris and Biden offer a good way to shatter that lens and bring us back into focus, because I think they can appeal to enough folks across the country and across all that demographic divide, and to break through the mass movement stuff. And to be clear on this, folks, the mass movement that we've seen, and it is a mass movement, and read up about mass movements, this kind of, humans are sheep, we're herd animals, we fall into psychoses and mass psychoses. We have all of ours, we all know our mental issues, our emotional issues. These things have happened in society, and we're in the middle of one right now. And it takes literally something on the scale of a pandemic to break him, to stop him, and to slow him down. And that's what's been kind of crazy, because without the pandemic, I don't know that we would have seen this. I don't know that the polls would be showing the way they are. I don't know that the support for Donald among all these people wouldn't be collapsing if their friends weren't literally dying around them while he's lying about it. So I think that might be enough to really switch it. But it also, again, you have a cornered rat, and a cornered rat with a bunch of rich friends who all may have broken a whole bunch of laws. And the only thing that's protecting them is the rat, the other big rat. So there's going to be some interesting fireworks next week with the Postal Service stuff. Him halting his changes doesn't reverse the changes that he done. That doesn't, approve all the overtime that's needed to get the stacks of mail off the floor. That doesn't explain all the dead chickens, all the late prescriptions, all the missed bills. So, with that, thanks for hanging out. I think Julie appreciate it. You get to bed; it's late down there. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting next 72 days, folks. And then we'll see how the votes come in and the counting, because that's going to be, like I say, that's, I think, part of the USPS strategy, is to be able to throw enough wrinkles in that chain to switch a few percentage points, which is why if we can get all the good people out there voting, a few percentage points isn't going to save them. And the landslide's going to crush the GOP in ways that's going to make them actually have to go back to read that, oh, we should stop being racist, huh? Yeah, you should. Good luck. That's it, man. I'm going to call that a show. That was fun. I think we're all caught up again, so we will see you probably around the 2-month mark, or before then if I come up with something short and sweet. But we're going to start building up another whole bunch of links to talk about. Oh, quick science stuff. These people learn how to make super sensitive photoreceptors, so we'll have some cool new technology in about 5 years, if that's something that you're interested in. That's it. All right. Good night, y'all. Thanks for dropping by. Thanks for anybody who catches the show later. It's always a pleasure. And peace out.